Everdeen, and today I'm going to explain to you how I crocheted this heart dress. And yes, today's video is going to be a little bit different than my typical tutorials, but I'm still going to try and make it as easy to follow as possible, especially since all you really need to know is how to make these squares and these hearts, and you're pretty much good to go. And I already made a full in-depth tutorial on how to make these heart squares in my last video of how to crochet this heart top, and this is pretty much just a continuation of that. That being said, the first part of this video is just going to be the first part of that video, so if you've already watched it, then you could skip to this time and start the actual crochet dress video, but for now we're going to start with how to crochet the heart squares. For this project, I'm using size 4 yarn from the brand I Love This Yarn in both white and in pink, but of course you could use whatever yarn you like. If you prefer 100% cotton or whatever, make or whatever color you like as well. You could just follow the exact same steps to recreate this top. I'm also using a size 5mm hook. And if you need somewhere where you could purchase yarn, I have my Amazon affiliate links where you can get similar yarn to what I'm using here, as well as the same size hook if you would like to use the same as well. Now, what we're going to be doing here for this project is essentially making a bunch of heart squares. Now, there are different ways you can make heart squares. I'm going to make it a little bit more tedious and complicated than it needs to be, because essentially what you would need to do to make the heart squares, you would just make the heart shape and then crochet the square around it, so it could look something like this, and that's how most people make heart squares. However, I personally don't like doing that because my hearts always come out wonky for some reason, so I'd rather make the heart the way that I like it to be shaped and then sew it onto a square afterwards, and I just prefer to do it that way. So for this project, I'm going to be making squares and hearts, and then once I've made all of them, I'm going to attach the heart to the square via a needle and thread, aka sewing it onto the square. Now again, that is much more of a tedious process as opposed to simply making the heart and then swapping out the color and then making the square around it. It's a whole extra step, and because we need to make so many of these, I'm not sure how many yet because I haven't made the project yet, but I'll let you know later. Since we have to make so many of these, it does really add up. So again, you don't have to do it this way, but just so you know, that's how I'm going to be making the heart squares in this video. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on making these heart squares. First, I'm going to show you how to make the heart, and then I'll show you how to make the square, and then after that, you're just going to repeat the process over and over and over again until you have a bajillion, but I'll let you know how many I use personally. So first thing we're going to do is grab our yarn, again, whatever color yarn you like. I'm going with the pink for now. And we're going to make a magic ring, which is grabbing the yarn and placing it over your index finger and your middle finger like this, grabbing it with your thumb like that, then wrapping the yarn that's still attached to the yarn ball around your two fingers and crossing it over like an X. Then we're going to put our hook in between or through, grab the back yarn and bring it through the front, holding everything together. Then we're going to chain twice, 1 and 2. Then we're going to hold that loop together still, and then we're going to continue making our heart. Now, I would love to avoid making the magic ring in projects as much as possible, but I feel like this is the best way to make a crochet heart, so that's why I went with magic ring. I know it's a little bit complicated, but you can rewatch that little scene over and over again if you are having trouble with making the magic ring. Okay, so once we get to this point, you're going to yarn over, then go through that loop, then yarn over again, go back through that loop, then yarn over, chain 1, yarn over, go through 2 loops, yarn over, go through the last 2 loops. You're going to do that 2 more times. And then 1 more, again, yarn over, through the loop, yarn over, back through the loop, yarn over, through 1 loop, yarn over through 2 loops, yarn over through the last 2 loops. So your project looks something like this so far. And then from here, we're going to make 3 double crochets, which is yarn over, through the loop, yarn over, back through the opening, yarn over through 2 loops, yarn over through the last 2 loops, yarn over through the opening, yarn over, back through the opening, yarn over through 2 loops, yarn over through the last 2 loops, then again, yarn over through the opening, yarn over, back through the opening, yarn over through 2 loops, yarn over through the last 2 loops. So it's going to be 3 what I call triple crochet, but I don't think that's right, and it's close to what a treble crochet is. So 3 of those, then 3 double crochets, and then 1 triple / treble crochet / whatever I made up right now, where I go through the loop, I chain 1, then go through 2 loops, and then go through the last 2 loops, followed by 3 double crochets, 1, 2, and 3, followed by another 3 treble / triple crochets, trying to make this not fall apart. So 1 treble / triple crochet, and then 2 and 3, and then to finish off this row we're going to slip stitch into that opening, and this is what the project looks like. So to seal it off, we're going to tug on the end of the yarn, and that should close it off nicely, and you should see a little heart form. From here I want to make the heart a little bit bigger, so I'm going to first single crochet into the first stitch of this new row, and then I'm going to go into that next stitch with a double crochet, then go into that same stitch with 2 more double crochets. So essentially it was single crochet and then 3 double crochets inside of that next stitch. That way it can maintain that shape of the heart here. So we have 3 double crochets at this point of the heart, and then from then on it's going to be 2 double crochets inside of that next stitch, then just 1 double crochet in the next one, followed by another just 1 double crochet in the one after that, and then 1 more double crochet. Then we get to like the middle of the heart, the point of the heart, and we're going to make that treble crochet. Then I like to also chain 1, then go into that previous stitch with a single crochet, then single crochet my way down once more, and then continue with the double crochet. So basically the exact same thing we did on the first side, but we're just going to mimic that on the other side, but just opposite since we're starting from the bottom. So we start off with the singular double crochets, and then once we get towards the round part of the heart, that's when we're going to make the 2 double crochets in 1 stitch, and then for the next stitch that's when we make the 3 double crochets, 1, 2, and 3. Then we're just going to single crochet and then slip stitch into the very last stitch, and I also like to slip stitch into the middle of the heart too, just to really seal that off. And this is what the project looks like so far. And then from here I just like to seal off the last row with a row of single crochet. So I'm just going to go into every stitch and make 1 single crochet followed by 2 single crochets inside 1 stitch, followed by 3 single crochets in a stitch at that very top of the heart, just to again maintain that shape. And then I'll make the 2 single crochets in that next stitch, and then after that every stitch besides the point of the heart is going to just be a single crochet all the way down. And once I reach this point right here, I'm going to make a single crochet Then I'm also going to chain 1, then go into the stitch before that and make a single crochet, then again single crochet my way back down to the opposite side of the heart. And the reason I add that extra chain is to keep the heart point extra pointy so it doesn't round out, and I find that really helps out. So then from here I'm just going to continue making the single crochets until I finish the heart. And then once I reach that point of the heart, I'm going to make those 3 single crochets. So those 2 single crochets, and then this is the point of the heart, so I'm going to make 3 single crochets. 3. Then I'm just going to continue with single crochets all the way down the heart to the very last stitch, and then a single slip stitch in the middle. And that's how I make my crochet hearts. Then from here you can just cut the yarn from the yarn ball and create a bunch more of these. So now that we know how to make a heart, you follow that exact step to make multiple of these, as well as multiple of these in a different color, since we are going to make a top that has alternating colors right here. It's the exact same step on how to make the hearts, so just make a bunch of these as well as a bunch of the other color as well. And now all you need to know is how to make the square. So I'll show you how to make the square. I'm just going to use pink again, since you could probably see it better than white against this white background. So to make the square, what we're going to do is grab our yarn and then make a slip knot. And then from that slip knot, we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, then go into that very first chain that we created, and we're going to create a single crochet. Then from there, we're going to make 5 more single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You're left with this little round ball, and then from here we're going to build on top of it by going into those stitches that we made in the previous row, and we're going to make 2 single crochets within every single stitch. So from the previous rows single crochets, you're going to make 2 single crochets inside of those single crochets. So 1 and 2, then 1 and 2, and 1 and 2. And then once you've gone all around, you made your 2 single crochets per stitch, you're going to complete that row by slip stitching into the very first single crochet you made of that row. So now you have this little circle. And from this circle, we're going to make a square. And to make a square, we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and then we're going to go into that very same stitch that we were just in and create a double crochet. Then from here, we're going to chain 1, then we're going to create 2 more double crochets inside of the same exact stitch that we were just in. And this is going to serve as a corner of the granny square. You may not see it yet, but we'll build it to get there. So from here, you're going to go to the next stitch and just make 1 double crochet, then go into the next stitch and also just make 1 double crochet. But in the next stitch, we're going to make another corner piece, which comprises of 2 double crochets inside of that same stitch, then chain 1 in between, then go into that same stitch, make 2 more double crochets inside of that same exact stitch. Then from there, you're going to go into the next stitch and you're going to make 1 double crochet, then go into the next stitch, make 1 double crochet. Then after that, you're going to go to the next stitch and make a corner, which is 2 double crochets, then a chain 1, then 2 double crochets inside of the same stitch. Then we're going to go into the next stitch, make only 1 double crochet, then the next stitch 1 double crochet, then in the next one we're going to make a corner, so that's 2 double crochets, then a chain 1, then 2 double crochets, 1 and 2. Then we're going to finish this off by going into the remaining 2 stitches, making only 1 double crochet per stitch. Then we're going to slip stitch into that very first stitch that we created, and voila, the circle is now a square. And from here it's very, very easy. We're just going to continue building on top of the square by doing the exact same thing essentially. So I'm going to, from here I'm going to slip stitch into the first corner piece, the first opening, and I'm going to start this new row by chaining 2. This is going to serve as 1 double crochet, so I'm just going to make another double crochet, then chain 1 in between, then go into that same opening of this corner piece, and then make 2 more double crochets to continue that corner piece shape. And then from here, every time I go into a regular stitch, it's just going to be 1 double crochet, but then every time I come across a corner stitch, that's when I'm going to make another corner stitch within the corner stitch. So those are all just normal stitches, so I just made 1 double crochet per stitch, but now I'm going into this corner piece, so we have this opening, that chain 1 in between the 2 double crochets, and I'm going to make another corner piece on top or within it. So that's 2 double crochets followed by a chain 1, then 2 double crochets inside of that same opening, and that's what it looks like so far. And then I'm going to go into the rest of the stitches, which are just regular stitches, so I'm just making 1 double crochet per stitch until I reach across to the opposite side for the next corner piece, and then once I reach that next corner piece, that's when I'm going to make another corner piece on top of it. So 2 double crochets, chain 1, then 2 double crochets, and that is that corner piece. And from here I'm just going to go into the normal stitches, so I'm just going to make 1 double crochet per stitch until I reach the next corner piece, and then once I reach the next corner piece, I'm again going to make yet another corner piece within that opening. So now I'm in the corner piece, and I'm going to make 2 double crochets followed by 1 chain in between, then 2 double crochets inside of that same opening. And we're finally going to finish off this last row by going into all the normal stitches with just a double crochet in all of them, just 1 double crochet in all of the stitches until we reach the corner piece. And then once we do, we're going to slip stitch into it to complete the row. And this is what your square should look like now. So we're just going to continue building it until you're happy with the size of the square. For me, it's going to be about this big, so probably like 2 more rows of doing that, and then I should get to this size. This is the size that I prefer, but of course you can use whatever size you want. If you want to make little tiny hearts and make little squares like this, obviously this heart's too big, but if you want to make little tiny hearts and then make the squares this size, you could also do that as well, but I prefer to be this size with this size heart, but of course you could do whatever you want. But if you follow these same steps, you could do pretty much the same thing, but have your own little twist to it by making them really tiny. Just know that you're gonna have to make more of these if you do decide to do that. But anywho, so you're just going to continue doing the same thing. Every time you reach a corner piece, you're going to make 2 double crochets inside of that corner piece, followed by a chain 1, then 2 double crochets within that same opening. And then every stitch other than the corner pieces, it's just going to be 1 double crochet in between, and that's going to build the square more and more. And then once you're happy with the size of it, then you could just stop. So I'm just going to go ahead and make 2 more rows following that same pattern, and then I'll get back to you. Okay, so I went ahead and completed those 2 other rows, and this is what my square looks like now. I just followed the exact same pattern, making sure that I create a corner piece within the previous row's corner piece, and then just completing the rest as normal. So now that I'm done, I'm going to cut the yarn from the yarn ball and seal the project by putting my hook through the last loop and then bringing the excess yarn through the last loop and giving it a tug. Then I'm going to tuck in the excess yarn, and voila, I have completed a square. Now that we have squares and now that we have hearts, we're going to attach them. And the way that I do it is, again, with a needle and thread. I sew the hearts onto the squares. So I just align it to where I would like the heart to be. And I make sure that I hold it fairly steady so that it doesn't move. And then I grab my needle and thread and start from the back. Then I go through both pieces and just start sewing it on. Just going back and forth, back, and then through the front, then through the back, then through the front, and then I make sure that's still aligned the way I want to. And then sometimes my heart's a little bit wonky, so I straighten them out and sew them in place. That's another reason why I really like doing this method instead, because even if my heart comes out a little bit lopsided, I could still correct it by just sewing it in place. So that's why I prefer this method instead, even though again it is much more tedious than just making the heart squares as someone normally would. That would probably save a lot of time, but this is yet an extra step that didn't really need to be done, but I prefer it this way. So yeah, I'm just continuing going back and forth, outlining the heart, making sure that it is indeed in the place I want it to be attached to. And once I've gone all around the heart, then I just make a knot at the end with my needle and thread. Then I cut the thread and head on to the next project. So yeah, that's how I attach the heart to the squares. But if you don't have a needle and thread yourself, you can also attach it using yarn and your hook. You're essentially going to be doing the same thing I'm doing with the needle and thread, but with your hook. It is a little bit more time consuming, and it is more noticeable when you use yarn, in my opinion, as opposed to needle and thread, since it is way thinner than the yarn that I'm using, so you can't really see it, which is another reason why I like using it. Also, it's just really easy. But again, yeah, you can use just your hook and your yarn if you want to attach it that way. But yeah, I'm just going to attach the rest of it and get back to you. And that's how I make my heart squares. So now that you know how to make these heart squares, you can attach them one of 2 ways, with yarn or with a needle and thread. I personally like to sew on the squares with a needle and thread, but you could always just use yarn to attach them to. That way you don't have to worry about getting a needle and thread. You could just use the yarn and hook that you already have. I'm going to attach them with a needle and thread, but since you already know how I do that, I'll show you how to attach it with yarn. So I can show you 2 ways. So again, you already know how I attach it with needle and thread. I'm just going to align them like this and then go back and forth and attach them by sewing it. But if you're going to use yarn and your hook, then you're going to put your 2 pieces together, then place your hook through one square and then through the stitch of the other square, then grab your yarn, bring it through with your hook, and create a slip stitch. Then go on to the next stitch and create a slip stitch, go into the stitch after that and create a slip stitch, stitch after that and create a slip stitch, making sure that the squares are nice and aligned the whole time. And then just continue on by going into the following stitches after that, like so, all the way down. And this is what your project should look like. And yeah, it's super duper easy. You're just going to align them and attach them. And then once these are attached, I'm going to align this one and attach it like this, making sure that you're always doing the attaching on the back side of it. Otherwise, the front will look like this, so you don't want it to look like that. But yeah, it's essentially all you have to do. Everywhere you want to attach them. So this will be attached, then these two will be attached, then these will be attached. It's also probably easier if you just attach two at a time. So attach these two, 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 and then it'll all just be one. So then when you attach these two pieces together, once these become one piece, attach them like that. And then this will be one piece, so then you attach them like that. Then this will be one piece, and then attach them like that. So many different ways that you could do it, but yeah, so once they're attached, I'll show you what I do next. So now that I've put together a couple of the squares, first of all, this is what it looks like. So after making the crochet top, I just continued adding more squares until the top got longer and longer and longer, and I was happy with the length. The thing is, my bottom half is bigger than my top half, so along the way, I had to actually add extra squares on the back of the dress to make the bottom half wider. I also didn't really want a bodycon dress, so it worked out nicely that it has the tiniest little flare at the bottom because of those extra squares that I added. But yeah, all I did was essentially squeeze in these two extra squares per row, but aligning them in between the squares of the previous row, if that makes sense. I'll draw it out for you so that it makes sense. And I only did this on the back of the dress because I wanted the front of the dress to have all the hearts lined up evenly. So the back of the dress looks a little crazy the way that the squares are aligned, but at least the front is even. Also, if you're still confused on how I did this, instead of lining up the two squares end to end, I lined up the squares I was adding so that it only reached the halfway point of the previous square. And then I attached them like that. And then added the second square the same way, but starting from the middle and ending at the end of the previous row square. I then just continued attaching the squares as normal after that to continue the color pattern. And of course, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. The dress probably maybe still have technically fit me if I had not added those extra squares, but it would have definitely fit pretty tight at the bottom, and it most likely would have been stretched out as well. So I figured my best choice was just to make the bottom portion of the dress bigger despite, it messing up the color pattern in the back. I think it's worth it. I really like the fit the way it is now, even though again when you look at the back you're like it's all messed up there color pattern wise, but the fit is really cute. As for the straps, I just went with a simple neck strap that ties together at the back. I simply attached the yarn to where I wanted the neck straps to start, then I chained 100 chains, then went back on that chain with a single crochet for 4 rows. Then I cut the yarn from the yarn ball and did the exact same thing on the other side. And the reason why I made 4 rows of single crochet on top of that strap is because I wanted the straps to be nice and thick. If they're too thin, I feel like they really dig into your neck when you have the neck strap because there's so much pressure there. But again, totally up to you. If you want thin straps, then you don't have to make multiple rows. But if you want nice thick straps, I suggest that you make a couple rows of single crochet. And that's it. So that's how I made my crochet heart dress, and I think it turned out pretty cute. And I hope that you have fun in making your very own heart dress and that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up before you go, and go and check out the rest of my channel. I have so many crochet related videos ranging from beginner friendly tutorials to crochet with me, how I style my crochet ideas, and so much more. And follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Both are at Krystal Everdeen. And don't forget to click that red subscribe button if you have not already, so I can see you next time. Bye! and have a magical day.